Hey guys, Stockaholics, thanks for being here today. I've been wanting to make a bunch of videos. It's a lot of ideas I've had lately, not a lot of time. But this is one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, so I thought maybe I would make this video with the limited time that I have. And that is this one, and I think this is going to be a disappointing topic to a lot of people, but I'm going to make it anyway. And I'm going to be talking about why I think we're not in a commodities super cycle, at least yet. So I believe that a lot of the things that we are seeing with the commodity prices surging are, like the Federal Reserve actually says, is transitory, and it is going to change in the coming year or two, I think. I think that we are in something I am going to be coining a distortion cycle. It is a cycle that of the commodity prices that is not sustainable. All right, so this is inflation, the search term on Google Trends. If I go and look this up, you may be noticing that over the past year or so, there has been increasing interest in this topic. And recently we're reaching some euphoric levels of interest in this inflation search term. There's a lot of talk about the Federal Reserve printing money. There's going to be hyperinflation. You got to buy gold, you got to buy silver, you got to buy something, anything, because the longer you hold on to this cash, well, cash is trash, right? It's a depreciating asset, which is correct. There is going to be some inflation, but I think there's an over fixation on this topic, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. And it's almost gotten so pervasive that if you think that anything but inflation is coming, you're kind of a lunatic. You're the crazy guy, yeah? And I've noticed many people have gone nuts with speculative investments like Doge, like Bitcoin, like Tesla. They've just been, these kinds of assets, or however you want to see them, have just gone up to euphoric levels. And I think that if we watch this video, I think we can explain some of that besides just the Federal Reserve printing money. And I do, by the way, I do think that that the stimulus and all of that stuff does have short-term inflation properties, but I don't think that they are lasting ones, and I'm going to talk about that. I think that, like the Federal Reserve has said, a lot of these forces that we're seeing are transitory. They're going to be temporary ones. People tend to say that the markets are forward-looking, but I don't. The more that I've been in the market, the more that I see people's behaviors, the more that I don't think that's true. I think what people actually do is they project current conditions into infinity. So that's what I think is happening here. Let's take a trip down memory lane, and let's take a quick look at the year 2020. So a year ago, the United States and many other countries around the world, well, they shut down their economies. Everybody had to go home. You had to stay there. We need to figure out what's going on. We've got to solve this new cervesa sickness problem that is pervasive everywhere. And so everybody went home and probably for good reason. We had to figure out what's going on. We needed to be able to figure out how to adapt to this new situation. Yeah. And, I would argue that to a large extent, we're getting there. We are solving this cerveza sickness problem. The ways that we've done that, we've altered our behaviors, and we've been developing vaccines, and those have been, in a lot of developed economies, being spread to the general population, right? So, humans are smart, we're adaptive, and however, there's some interesting properties that all of these things that we've done in the past year have caused that I don't think that a lot of people are aware of. All right, so one of the things that happened to enable these kinds of lockdowns the government was issuing to the people is that to make these things happen, there had to be some kind of government support, especially in these Western economies. If people go to home but they don't have any money to pay their bills or buy food, these lockdowns are going to be unsuccessful, right? So what did the government do? Well, they did a few things. They passed some bills in Congress. They made stimulus bills. And some of the things now, I think we have about $3,200 that was given to most United States citizens. There were some rent and mortgage moratoriums. So during this time, and these are still prevalent, there was a lot of evictions that were canceled. So there's two effects here, right? Most people had more money than usual and less expenses, right? There was unemployment benefits, right? So in order to really encourage people not to go out and work, what can we do? Okay, we want people to stay safe. We want to, limit as many interactions with people as possible to limit the spread. We should add some money we should add some expanded benefits to those unemployment checks, right? So they originally started with $600. And now we still have these, I believe. Those additional expanded benefits of unemployment. People on unemployment get a $300 additional dollars to whatever they would normally get on their unemployment benefits, right? And then there was also the effect that businesses were given some PPP loans, right? So the way you can think of all of these kinds of things together is there's just lots of money going everywhere, right? And, again, probably for good reason, right? So these had two collectively major effects, right? Like I wanted to talk about. People had money to meet their obligations. But what a lot of people didn't realize is that a lot of people had less obligations, right? If you don't have to pay your rent and mortgage, this is a big part of your expenses for most people, right? My housing costs me about a third of my monthly income, for example, right? So if I didn't have to pay that, which I am because I'm not a deadbeat, that adds a lot of money, right? And all of this money too. This is going to lead to consumption. It's going to lead to increased consumption. All right, but for every action, well, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the things that were enabling people to stay home before, a lot of those properties, well, they still exist today. However, they are beginning to come to an end. But I would like to kind of show you this. A lot of people want people to come back to work. We are largely vaccinated, or at least the vulnerable populations. But there's also a lot of unintended consequences from all of these expanded unemployment benefits, these rent and mortgage moratoriums, right? And I'd like to give you guys an example. This is an article from the Wall Street Journal, their business section. Restaurants serve up signing bonuses, higher pay to win back workers. With job openings above pre-pandemic levels, eaters from McDonald's to Wolfgang Puck's Spago are battling for new hires. Restaurants spent much of the past year trying to win back customers, but now they're struggling to win back employees. Nationwide chains and independent eateries alike said that they can't hire enough workers to staff kitchens and dining rooms, just as COVID-19 restrictions relax and more customers want to eat out again. Fast food operators, including owners of Jimmy John's gourmet sandwiches restaurants, are offering signing bonuses for recruits. Chipotle Mexican Grill Inc. is offering free college tuition to employees who work at least 15 hours a week wow, that's a pretty good deal. After 4 months on the job, right? So what's happening is they can't find workers, and the reason we can't all of these lower paying or undesirable jobs like in fast food and restaurants, they can't find them why? Because all of these people have lower obligations and higher incomes because of all the government spending, right? So if I could stay home and I could collect unemployment benefits and I could get those extra $300 juicy dollars a month, and I could not go back to work and not go work at McDonald's or In-N-Out Burger or wherever and flip burgers, which is probably, not the funnest thing in the world. And I could have all the time in the world to just chill at my house, right? What are most people going to do? They're going to not go to work, right? So this is causing the government to be competing for workers with the general economy, right? So, it's like, why is this even a thing? Why on earth would you have to offer bonuses for unskilled labor, right? These should be some of the easiest jobs to fill through a revolving door kind of a mindset, right? So it just kind of shows you how the government is really distorting this economy. All right, so the incentives that enabled lockdowns, well, now they're preventing workers from going back to work. There's a lack of childcare workers, which also prevents many moms from going back to work too. So there's kind of like these chain effects too, right? You know, if you're going to go and work in childcare, it's also generally a lower paid job, and then it's probably higher stressful if you have kids in your face all day. And the same thing's true, you know, if mom's collecting unemployment or there's not a lot of expenses currently, you know, why on earth would she go back to work when she would have to additionally add some expenses for childcare, right? So these expanded unemployment benefits discourage workers from going back to work. And, you know, renters, they can simply not pay rent with, you know, no real effective consequences. The landlord, they can't really, or most landlords, they can't do something about this. You know, I read somewhere that about 1 in 5 renters are currently behind. They have, or they're not paying their rent, right? And you think about it, you know, what would a lot of people do, you know, if they have all of these, you know, these situations, they can't get kicked out. You know, a lot of them are just not going to pay their rent. And then what's going to happen in a year's time? Well, they're just going to say, okay, bye. You know, good luck, landlord. You know, no, I'm not going to pay you back the back rent. See ya. You know, it's like, what's he going to do about it, right? So they can simply avoid paying rent for a year and move on at the landlord's expense. All right. So because many people, they project the current conditions into infinity, and I think a lot of people don't really understand what's going on. This inflationary narrative is pervasive. People feel how easy money has been over the past year, and they assume that this easy money is going to continue into the future, right? People are also consuming at rates they normally wouldn't be able to consume at. Now, a lot of people assume that the spikes in many commodities over the past year are a result of inflation or a supercycle that's caused, you know, by chronic increased demand. And I don't see this happening into the future. So to kind of show you what I think is actually happening in a lot of commodities, and all commodities kind of have a story to tell, we're going to look at a few of them. All right, so let's start with lumber. Wow, there has been an incredible price development for this commodity, one of the highest ones. But I think you can really make sense of this if you think about this in terms of demand and supply. There's a bunch of conditions besides the Federal Reserve's money printer going burr that caused this to happen, right? So now some of this money has led to some increased consumption, I believe, right? But I think it's temporary, right? But there's also some other things we need to think about, right? So what is lumber mostly used for? It's used in housing. Now, I do believe that there is a chronic housing issue caused by demographics. And I think that, yes, I think that we are going to see higher than average lumber prices in the future, but not anywhere near the levels that we're currently at. But yes, I think over a historical trend, because we need more houses to meet an increasing millennial population relative to the previous generation. Yes, lumber prices are probably going to go up in the future, right? But there's some other things happening here, right? So, you know, what's really causing this huge spike in lumber recently? You know, because there was all of these mortgage moratoriums, and there was all these rent deferments, right, or whatever from the government, you know, that's probably having some effect on, you know, the supply of housing, right? Let's say, you know, there's normally a certain amount of people every year that their houses and their properties are going to be foreclosed upon. Well, that was completely removed over the past year, right? So there's a lot of people that had increased incomes over the past year, and simultaneously there's an artificially low supply of housing because nobody's being evicted. When even under normal conditions, a lot of these people would probably be evicted, right? So that's leading to, I believe, an increased demand in new housing. You know, people have to find want to buy a house, right? And there's a lot of people with those extremely low interest rates. They're like, we got to take advantage of this, and they're going nuts with trying to buy something, anything, right? And there's also this inflation mindset, right? It's like, frick, I got all this cash, I got to buy something. Well, one of the things they're trying to buy is lumber. Now, there's a supply side too, which a lot of people don't think about. Last year, you know, let's see, when the cervesa problems first started, the lumber prices went down, and that was due to a lot of people being, you know, stuck at home. There's building projects being, you know, deferred, And simultaneously, though, there were the mills that were producing lumber were also being shut down. Now, something happened, right? People were stuck at home and they had decreased expenses and increased money available to them. And they're like, frick, well, what am I going to do in these lockdowns? What did a lot of people do? Well, they remodeled their homes. And what did a lot of people do to remodel their homes? They went out and they bought lumber. So there was also, not only was supply restricted, but demand for this lumber product was artificially high, right? And this artificially high demand, supported by these this easy money mindset, this inflation mindset, this artificially low housing supply, is what I believe driving these lumber prices to super highs. Right now, here's the thing: the cure for high prices is high prices. Most sane people are not going to pay these kinds of prices for lumber. They're going to be like, you know what, I'm good. I'll just wait, or maybe I'll just keep renting, or maybe I'll go live in my trailer, whatever instead, right? And there's one more thing too. When there's these prices go insanely high, what does that do to supply? Well, what do all these mills say? Holy crap, we can get this amount of dollars for our lumber. We've really got to ramp up this production to take advantage of these high prices. So what is that going to do? Not only is demand going to be restricted, but supply at some point is going to have to increase to take advantage of these amazing prices. All right, so let's take a look at copper. I recently made a video on copper, so if you're interested in copper in general and more specific detail, you can go check that out. Maybe I'll put a link somewhere, I don't know, that you can click on if I figure out how to do that. All right, but anyway, let's take a look at copper. So recently, copper, I believe, has touched nominal all-time highs. Time to get involved. Supercycle's coming in, guys. Buy at all-time highs if you follow CNBC. Not investment advice, but recently I sold all of my copper. It's a cyclical industry, just like most commodities. It's buy high, or no, sorry, it's buy low, sell high, right? So let me try and break this down briefly. What the heck what's happening with this price, right? So one way we can understand this is that China, it consumes roughly half, and it has been increasing also, of the world's copper supply, right? And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because they're one of the biggest exporting nations in the world, and they use this material to make all kinds of products, electronics, industrial goods, whatever, right? And we think about all these Western nations where they've had, or at least in the United States, we've had higher than average income. What are a lot of people doing? And there's this inflationary mindset. What are they doing? They're going out and spending this money. And what is that leading to? Well, an unanticipated demand in copper growth, right? Or copper demand, right? Now, at the same time, just like lumber, there has been a slight supply disruption. Last year, about 2% of global supply was lower that was produced because of restrictions in certain mines to protect their miners. They were concerned about cervesa sickness spreading. And you might say, well, that's only 2%. That's not a lot. If you think about copper, the supply and demand are usually very close. So 2% is actually a really meaningful disruption in copper, right? And there's also some other things taking place from the supply side where because of all these high prices, there's been some strikes from in Chile, where this is one of the #1 copper producer in the world. The workers are saying, we need more money because they want to take advantage of these very high prices to get better working conditions or incomes, right? So just like all of the other commodities, there's this demand and supply, and it's a very similar story to the lumber story. Now, one thing I'd also like to briefly mention about copper is it's seasonal as well. There is a certain cycle that takes place, and we are in the seasonal low of mining production, right? So again, what is the cure for high prices? Well, we are getting into that season that miners can take advantage of. And when you see that there's this $4.50 an hour, or sorry, $4.50 a pound copper, what are these miners going to do? They're going to say, guys, overtime is now available. Would you guys like to go and work 17 hours a day so we can mine copper to take advantage of these high prices? Again, the cure for high prices is high prices. All right, so let's look at another commodity called lean hogs. And over the past year or so, these have, like many other commodities, have just gone on an absolute tear. And you'd be like, what? How on earth could you explain this other than money printing for lean hogs to go to the moon, right? Okay, so let's take a look at this, right? Chicago Reuters, U.S. lean hog futures on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange jumped higher on Wednesdays on fear of African swine fever rising across parts of Asia, as well as tight domestic supply as the U.S. rebuilds its hog herd after culling during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the same thing took place in China approximately a year ago. They killed a tremendous amount of hogs because they were infected with this swine flu as well, right? So at the same time, you have this, you have the same amount of demand for this product, the supply has been reduced. Now, what's interesting, why am I talking about these lean hogs? This is one of the things that has affected some other commodity prices as well. So last year, I mentioned there was that swine flu and that affected the hog populations in China. But you have to think about what hogs eat as well, right? What do you need to increase your lean hog population? Well, you need agricultural products. Okay, so if I want to rebuild this lean hog population, what am I usually going to feed these guys? I might feed them some corn. Okay, well, if you look at the price of corn recently, well, there's been some disruptions in corn over the last year too. But we want to buy it, in China or in the United States or wherever, to increase our cattle herds again. And by the way, there was also extreme flooding that took place in China last year. 2020, man, it was a year that disrupted some agriculture over there as well. And what are the Chinese doing? Well, they're importing record amounts of corn. Now that the corn prices have reached these astronomical levels, and they still want to rebuild these lean hogs, and they want to get this protein. What are they doing? Okay, well, now they're like, frick, well, maybe we can get some alternatives to corn because the corn price is going so high. So they're like, okay, maybe we'll feed some of our hogs wheat. So now what is happening to wheat prices to meet this increased demand for these two products? Well, the wheat prices are going up, right? So it's not all just about the Federal Reserve saying, money printing, right? There's supply and demand effects for all commodities that can explain these immense moves that we've seen in the last year. 2020 has just been an absolute incredible year for both supply disruptions and an unanticipated demand for these commodities. All right, so every commodity has surged has a similar story to tell. Many have had supply-side disruptions, and many have had meaningful and unanticipated demand, which a lot of it is that transitory word, I believe, right? It almost seems like a dirty word to say, right? Some of this is stimulus money. Yes, some of it is. There is that because of Americans and other Westerners having higher than average incomes and lower than average obligations. Yes, some of it is going to lead to increased spending. And this increased an artificial demand, right? Some of it is not. There are supply side and stories to tell as well. And some other demand side stories to tell as well, too. Now, the thing to realize is that current market conditions, unlike what most people seem to think for some reason, they do not project into infinity. The money printer is not going to go burr forever. The cure for high prices is also high prices. When all of these commodities reach these high prices, people are like, I'm good, I'm not going to buy it. And when they get to a certain level, and the vice versa is true. If you're supplying these goods, you're like, okay, guys, everybody's getting overtime. You're starting a hog farm. You're starting a hog farm. You guys are all growing corn. The supply is going to catch up too, right? Here's the thing. Commodity supercycles are driven by sustained transformations of society, driven largely by demand. There's also this narrative out there that this is the result of the green transformation. No meaningful changes have taken place since 2019 or 2018 in in the green transformation, right? Yes, I think that this could have the potential for to cause a commodity supercycle if these were the actual catalysts to cause them. But that's not what's happening right now. This is not the driver of commodity price increases despite media propaganda. And make no mistake, that's what it is, right? Okay, and to kind of show you guys, I have this picture here. It's a pendulum, right? Just as the pendulum swings in one direction, it can very easily, and because it swung so far, swing in the opposite, right? So here's some things to kind of show you how this current market condition is not going to project forever. And here's some articles from Google. Federal judge strikes down eviction moratorium. Okay. The New Washington, a federal judge on Wednesday struck down the nationwide moratorium on evictions imposed by the Trump administration last year. Remember, there was the moratorium that's causing people to have to spend less money for that housing. A lot of people, is a third of their income, like myself, right? That's ending. Now, even if this doesn't go through, it's slated to end in June. That's only a few months from now, right? So all of those people who've been slacking and deadbeats, who are either renters or what do you call them? Landlords, who aren't paying their mortgages, they're going to start to get evicted and they're going to start to be foreclosed on, right? And if I shouldn't say deadbeat, because everybody has their own conditions. There are people out there who genuinely can't make their payments. Okay, I'm not saying that I shouldn't have said that. I kind of feel bad. Anyway, okay, there's another one. Opinion: the GOP settles on a nonsense corporate tax. The congressional Republicans, right? There's two parties in Congress, right? The Republicans said on April 11th, President Biden's infrastructure plan is too expensive, right? This is one thing people don't think about too, right? There was unilateral support for a lot of these former bills in Congress to get the money out to the people because everybody understood that, okay, we have a unique situation here. There is a cervesa pandemic, and we're shutting things down. We have to get these people money, right? The opposite is starting to happen, right? People are starting to say, you know what? Everybody's got vaccines. Why are we still paying for these things? Why can't Joe go back to work instead of sitting on his couch and getting $300 on the taxpayer's dime? Why is he not going back to and taking advantage of that bonus at I forget some of the restaurants or wherever, people are going to go back to work. This market condition isn't going to project forever. All right, so there's another side of that too, right? What you're seeing in Washington, there's a lot of talk about what? Tax increases. And if you think about it, this is probably an inevitability. You just had a massive amount of government spending. How are you going to pay for a lot of this stuff? Probably going to come from taxes, right? So Biden to float historic tax increase on investment gains for the wealthiest. President Joe Biden will roll out a plan to raise taxes on the wealthiest Americans, including the largest ever increase in levies on investment taxes, right? So yeah, some wealthier people are going to have to pay higher than average taxes. And who else is going to have to pay higher than average taxes? Most of us, right? If you're involved in investing, that's going to affect you too, right? So these conditions that led to this weird situation that we've seen in the Western world, it's not going on forever, guys. It's time to get back to work. The stimulus high is coming to an end. People are going to sober up. The conditions that led to this massive inflationary mindset, they are going away when people realize that, oh, I need money to pay my bills, right? So this widespread belief in this inflation mindset, yes, there's going to be some slight inflation in the future, but most of this hype is wrong.